Guys, today we're going to be talking about cardiorespiratory fitness in today's videos. Cardiorespiratory fitness, it allows us to measure the capacity of the lungs, the heart, the blood vessels, and the muscles to support us while we do large muscle mass exercises. Now this is good to keep track of because it allows us to set a certain frequency, duration, and intensity when developing an individual fitness program for a client. Now we normally do this by measuring their VO2 max. Normally the VO2 max is measured in a maximal assessment. This is done either on a treadmill or a cycloergometer. What it is we'll have a client exercise for a couple minutes until they reach a steady state heart rate, and throughout the exercise we'll raise the grade on the intensity. As we raise the intensity, their heart rate will go up and their oxygen consumption will go up as well. Eventually it'll plateau, what we call a VO2 max. It'll go up as the graded intensity increases as well, and I'll show you that in a minute on a graph from a laboratory setting that I do have. Now that is the gold standard, but the thing about that is that it does require expensive equipment, and not everyone's going to have access to a laboratory or a research setting. So not to worry guys, another way that we can test the VO2 max is through a submaximal exercise. This can be done through a 1 mile walking test or a 1 mile jogging test. It's designed for both men and women. For the jogging test, it's designed to do it at a moderate pace. Now for ones who can't run, or ones who, people who are older or sedentary, that's when we use the walking test instead. That's preferably for them. That way we don't, because when you run, it's going to increase the likelihood of an injury for orthopedic or musculoskeletal injury, as you're running on a hard surface and you want to run at a good moderate pace. So like I just mentioned, running on a hard surface for the 1 mile submaximal jogging test, that will increase the likelihood of a cardiovasculatory and orthopedic injury. So for ones who aren't active, who are older and sedentary, like I just mentioned, we'll have them do the 1 mile walking test, as testing the maximal VO2 is more dedicated to a clinical and research setting. So I'll see you guys out on the track, and I'll let you know about more the information on the 1 mile jogging and walking test. Alright guys, so as I was mentioning, there is a linear relationship between the VO2 max and the work rate on a graded exercise assessment. Eventually the VO2 max will plateau and reach a peak, and that will give you the exact amount on VO2 max. But as you can tell in the photo, not everyone is going to have access to a clinical and research setting. It requires expensive equipment and the expertise of a technician to calibrate the equipment and medical supervision. But it's really neat because you can get an exact amount of the VO2 max. And the only thing about it is that you do need a team of assistants, because in this type of setting you need someone to read you the heart rate, read the VO2 values, the CO2 values, and the O2 values that you collect on the data. As you can tell here, at minute 14 the VO2 reached the peak at 1.62, and after that it decreased. But what happens when you don't have access to it? Well, we can do a submaximal test. The only thing you'll need is the stopwatch, some comfortable shoes, some comfortable clothing, and a 400-meter indoor-outdoor track. So let's go out there and I'll talk about more about that. Today we're doing a 1 mile jogging test. It's designed to prevent injuries. It's a submaximal VO2 test for women and men. You can do this in an indoor-outdoor setting for a track on a flat surface that measured at least 400 meters. One thing you will need is a stopwatch. For men, you don't want the jogging test to be no more than 8 minutes, and for females, no more than 9 minutes. After the test, you can do your heart rate. You want to count it for at least 15 seconds, multiply that times 4, and you don't want your heart rate to exceed no more than 180 beats per minute. Guys, one thing I forgot to mention about the 1 mile jogging test is that it is designed for men and women, but the specific age is between 18 and 29-year-olds. This is more designed for the people who do exercise, as you don't want the sedentary or elderly ones running at a pace, because the pace we're going to have them running at is a moderate steady state exertion level. One important thing immediately after the exercise, you want to measure their heart rate. Now, for an exact value, you can get a heart rate monitor. This will decrease the chance of error in predicting your VO2 max. But if you don't have a heart rate monitor, it's okay. What you can do is you can do it through the radial or the carotid artery. Immediately after the assessment is over, you want to measure it for about 15 seconds and then multiply that times 4. Now keep in mind, when measuring the heart rate, there's a couple of things that you want to do control, because the heart rate can be interrupted by environmental factors such as the heat or humidity. It can be affected by their diet as far as what they consumed, either caffeine or the previous meal, or their behavioral, or whatever they did before as well, whatever, if they had exercised before, that can raise their heart rate, or maybe if they're anxious. Another thing is if they smoke. That can all fluctuate with the heart rate and can give you under over predictions for your VO2 max, as the heart rate that you're reading is going to predict the VO2 max whenever you're doing your equations. Now remember, after the time is over, it's important to do have your stopwatch and record it in minutes, because the time that you get in minutes, we're gonna divide that by 60 seconds. To help establish the suitable pace before the jogging test, you want to have your subject warm up for at least 2 to 3 minutes. You could do this with a moderate stretch or jogging, whatever you prefer. As your subject is doing their test, you want them running at a moderate pace. You don't want them to exceed over 180 beats per minute. This is a 1 mile walking test. This is also a submaximal test designed more for sedentary individuals who aren't that active. It's designed for people ages between 20 and 69. Good thing about this test is that you don't have to run. Important thing is you do want to wear loose clothing, good supported shoes. You can do this on an indoor-outdoor track that's on an uninterrupted flat surface, measured at least 400 meters. And what you want to do is you want to have your subjects walk as fast as they can for 1 mile. After the 1 mile test, you want them to have to check their heart rate, again via the wrist or the neck. You want to count it for at least 15 seconds and multiply that times 4 to get their heart rate. Before they begin the exercise, you want to make sure they do at least a 5 to 10 minute warm-up. Once the warm-up is over, you can have them begin their test. The thing I didn't mention about the 1 mile walking test is that it was designed for a large population because of the equipment that is needed. The only thing you really need is the stopwatch and of course your subjects and the track that is measured at least 400 meters on a flat uninterrupted surface, and it can be indoor and outdoor as well. Good thing about doing the 1 mile walking test is that as mentioned earlier, it's designed for individuals who aren't active, people who are sedentary, or people who are older as well. And it's a good method of measuring their VO2 max through the submaximal assessment, because there's a small standard chance of error with the equations that you can use. Now keep in mind guys, whenever you do the heart rate, it's important that you teach them how to measure their heart rate, because again it's important that you get the accurate measurement via the radial or the carotid artery. And if you have a heart rate monitor, use this. This will significantly decrease the chance of error when measuring the heart rate. Again, you can do the radial or the carotid, so keep that in mind. Okay, so once we get our data, we can then plug it into the equation to estimate our VO2 max. For this equation for the steady state jog, the weight is going to be recorded in kilograms. The age is not needed, but we'll record that in years. The sex, if they're a man, we're going to multiply it times 1. If they're a woman, we're going to multiply it times 0. For the walk time, it's always going to be recorded in minutes, and we're going to divide that by 60 to get a decimal. And for the heart rate, this is going to be recorded in beats per minute, guys. So anything that they got after the assessment, that's going to be what you're going to plug into your equation. Now for the 1 mile walk test, this is going to be a little different. The weight is going to be recorded in pounds. The age is needed in this equation. It's going to be recorded in years. Again, gender, 1 for men and 0 for women. The walk time, we'll record that in minutes and divide that by 60 seconds. And then the heart rate, again, we'll plug that in beats per minute to plug it into the equation. Okay guys, so for example, if we had a 55-year-old woman who weighed 140 pounds, did the walk test in 16 minutes, had a heart rate of 143 beats per minute, the first thing we'll do is grab that 16 minutes and divide it by 60 to get our decimal. This is for the 1 mile walk test, guys, so keep in mind the age is included, which is 55 in years. Now, once we get this information, we plug our information into our equation. We'll get a VO2 max of 76.35 ml/kg per minute unless stated otherwise. Now keep in mind with this test, guys, you can grab this value and then you can relate it to the fitness category that they fall into according to the Rockport fitness chart. But keep in mind, guys, with this equation, their body weight for females is not to exceed 125 pounds for women and 170 pounds for men. If they do exceed over that weight, their cardiorespiratory fitness values can be overestimated. Thank you for watching, guys.